Well, good morning and welcome back to the Red Bull Ring, where qualifying 2 has just kicked off for the International GT Open. Absolutely thrilling day at the racetrack yesterday, with an almighty scrap for the overall win that involved 4 or even 5 different manufacturers at one point of the 7 we have represented on the grid here. But the cars now making their way back out onto the racetrack, so the drivers who took the checkered flag yesterday are kicking off proceedings here today. So that means we have the likes of Dean McDonald in the Greystone McLaren, Mirko Bortolotti taking part in his first GT Open qualifying session, the DTM champion joining the Oregon squad for this weekend, as is Enzo Guerrasi making his GT3 debut, being promoted from Oregon's Super Trofeo team, where things have been going very well for the championship leader there. We've also got Ralph Aaron for Get Speed in this session as well, so plenty to look out for, with lots of quick runners, as well as Christopher Haase, of course, as well, our new championship leader, after a third-place finish for East Allen on home soil. That has given them the championship lead by just 3 points going into today's race, although things start to look a little bit differently if you apply the drop scores. That actually hands it back to Levente Reves by just 1 point. Things closing up as well in the Pro-Am and Am Championships. Just 1 point separate now Valentin Pierberg and Dominic Baumann for SBS, along with Aaron Walker and Steve Yance from Get Speed in the Pro-Am Championship. But then in Am, it's actually tied on points now after Garage 59's victory in that category yesterday. Mark Sampson and guesting Marco Polcini, and a very difficult weekend for the team that's dominated proceedings so far in the last 5 races, Gino Forgione and Michele Rugolo. They're tied on 90 points apiece now. It's Chris Stevens up here in the comments box, George Morgan alongside me. George, I mean, we've got to talk about yesterday. What a day yesterday was.
A perfect advert, Mr. Chris Stevens, of GT3 racing, and yet another chapter in the story of young drivers coming into the series as well. Take a bow, Josh Ratican, and of course Jaden Kelly. A fabulous debut here in the International GT Open, and really taking the fight to some of these established stars such as the likes of this man, Mirko Bortolotti, as well, who will be making his first qualifying appearance, as you so rightly said. The championship taking another swing, another turn. Obviously, we've got to apply drop scores towards the end of the campaign, but for now, we get to revel in how close this fight ultimately is, with drop scores aside. Obviously, the 2 new teams coming in this weekend, of course, if we look at the overall point scoring, Racing Trevor and, of course, Car Collection also nailing in their first points of the championship in Pro-Am. Of course, if we go to the overall scores, it was all about Greystone GT's Josh Ratkin and Jaden Kelly picking up 8. We had Poulsen coming in with Jens Klingman and Christian Poulsen netting a 1-point finish after finishing in P10. It was a fantastic effort on their part. And bear in mind, as a new driver that comes in, you're automatically given that additional handicap that you must serve during the pit lane. So the fact that they managed to subjugate that at the same time and still perform to achieve points whilst they're not in a championship fight is still a great feat.
Yeah, Jaden Kelly and Josh Ratican incredibly happy with how their first ever GT3 race went. Of course, Jaden Kelly coming from the McLaren Artura series, Josh Ratican coming from GT4. It is the former, the Australian, who is at the wheel of the number 27 Greystone, which is new for this weekend. This is the car that was parked at the side of the road in the Am category yesterday, now tied on points. And after 5 consecutive victories in the Am category, it is now tied on points between Forgione, Rugolo and Sansom. And in fact, we didn't mention this for AF Corsa actually, but those 5 consecutive wins beats the record of 4 back-to-back wins in that category, set in, first of all, in 2017 by Alexander Mosiv and Davide Rizzo for Casper Sky, and then also in 2019 for Alexander Harachwina and Martin Conrad for HTP. And they also have the opportunity to score the most wins in that class in a season. And that was set by Get Speed's Jens Lieberhauser and Florian Schultz in 2020, and also by Alexander Harachwina and Martin Conrad for Manfilter in 2022. So something to keep an eye out on if they manage to take the Am win again. at some point. Other things to look out for, we are looking for our 9th different pole sitter of the season. Go all the way back to the start of the season. Fabi Schiller from Get Speed, Alex Fontana from Car Collection. Greystone bagged the Spa 500 pole position, which is where we take the average of the two drivers for the endurance race. So Dean McDonald and James Cull putting on pole position together there. Both Tom Fleming and Marvin Kirchhoffer for Garage 59 taking pole positions in Hockenheim. Tom Leben for Elite, Christopher Haase for East Talent, Tommaso Mosca from AF Corsa, and then of course yesterday Max Hesse in the Racing Trevor BMW. So 8 different pole sitters so far this season, 6 different race winning crews, or well, cars at least as well. There's a bit of a complication with Levente Reves sharing the car with both Maxi Goetz and Matteo Cairoli, depending on the schedule of Maxi Goetz. So cars getting their first few flying laps in. Giacomo Altoe is at the wheel of the Baron Motorsports number 91 car. Great day for the sister number 92 machine. Baron Motorsport taking Pro-Am victory on home soil. The Vienna-based squad with Philip Baron himself alongside Eduardo Bacci. And he was absolutely storming up the order in the latter stages of the race. But it is the 24-year-old Italian Ferrari Challenge champion of last year, racing in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship over in the States at the moment. Of course, we will never forget Giacomo's championship here with Albert Costa back in 2019 as well. Great to have Giacomo back with us for this weekend at the very least. He and Ernst Kirkmeyer sharing the car once again, as they did at this racetrack a year ago. And it's Altoe setting the purple sector times at the moment, but is coming up on a little bit of traffic here in the form of the BDR Grupo Prom Mercedes of Alfredo Hernandez coming into the final sector.
Yeah, Giacomo Alto, of course, a winner at this circuit back in 2019 en route to that championship alongside Albert Costa for Emil Frey. Unfortunately now with this traffic, it is going to set this lap back a little bit, but obviously still plenty of time. And I'd imagine, given the conditions are vastly different from yesterday, definitely a bigger, vaster chill in the air as opposed to the more warmer conditions that we experienced in yesterday's outing for qualifying. We will see it probably heat up towards the end of the session as Altoe now makes his way through turn 1 yet again. Mosca currently at the top of the shop, as he was at the end of play last night. Obviously, as they came across the checkered flag line with a second race win of the season, back-to-back wins as well, taking obviously the first one back at Paul Ricard in race 2, and now following on in perfect fashion and style. So altogether, a great visit for Ferrari as a whole. Speak of the Devils, there is Tommaso Mosca right now making his way through Slosh Gold and definitely reveling in that astonishing display that we of course witnessed, hunting down Anthony Bartone, who we have to say put in a massively stern defence, and now once again Mosca finding pace in the first sector. 54,000 based on his first time that was set. We've got Tom Empson, who is now third fastest ahead of Mikey Porter at the moment. Giacomo Altoe as Mirko Bortolotti moves into third fastest in his first proper laps now being unfurled in qualifying here in the International GT Open, as now Mosca comes through the Jochen Rindt corner. Alexei Nessov now ahead of Mirko Bortolotti, ahead of Empson. Porter drops down as well. Here comes Mosca through the final corner at Red Bull Mobile curve, 57 thousandths up on his previous best time that landed in the fastest blow, and now back through again purple in the first 2 sectors, make that 3, and he increases the gap now to the car behind to just over 4 tenths. Dean McDonald into third fastest.
Of course, Tommaso Mosca overcoming the 15-second handicap that was having to be served owing to the victory from Paul Ricard at the podium there as well. They're up to 20 seconds of handicap for today's race, which might be more insurmountable. Doesn't sound like a lot, those extra 5 seconds, but then we did have a slightly odd situation yesterday where the likes of Zygo and Bartone and Kelly were squabbling a little bit too much and actually holding each other up, which rather played into the hands of Tommaso Mosca, who made it back-to-back victories for the AF Corsa squad alongside Carl Bennett, the Thai American driver. It's just coming onto the back of the track-focused McLaren, which joins us from the British GT Championship. That is Darren Kell, the father of James, who races in the number 33 McLaren. In fact, they raced together in GT Cup over in the UK, and Darren managing to get second place on his debut, his first visit to the Red Bull Ring, first visit to really any European track apart from Spa, where he's done a few club outings. The 750 Motor Club does a sort of annual outing over to the Ardennes Forest. So Altaway back into pit lane in number 91, which is got a bit more vinyl on it than the sister car. Elite Motorsport. Now, questions were raised yesterday. Why did Tom Leben bail into pit lane 10 minutes before the driver change window opened? He had a slow puncture that was actually picked up on the first lap of the race. So the fact that they managed to go 20 minutes into the race, just watching the PSI fall, basically, and leaving it until the latest possible moment to actually bail. I think they were trying to see if they could make it to the driver change window. Yeah. But I think had they gone another lap, Tom would have ended up in the wall.
Well, yeah, it's understandable. I mean, obviously, there's a definite, grip deficiency down in that final corner. We've seen mistakes made in the past, as now Christopher Haas is now treading water a little bit, heading through the next sequence. Now, let's see what happened here. This is coming out of turn 3 at Remus Corner. Over the top, just getting the rear out on the Audi R8. Now, where's that going? Interesting. Power out, perhaps?
No, so, I don't think it's power. I think something's gone wrong on the left rear there, potentially, because it almost looks like it's riding up high on the front right side, and the left rear did look a little bit askew. Has he picked up a puncture there, I wonder? Yeah, he has. Yeah, he's got a puncture. Wow, so unusual situation here for Christopher Haas, who's going to bring it back as slowly as possible so as not to do any damage to that car. Now, we did see Maxi Gertz at the start of the race yesterday have a similar problem, but that was more due to contact, and despite the cautiousness with which Maxi brought it back to the pit lane, that tyre still delaminated and did damage to the car and made it a complete handful to drive for the rest of the race.
Yeah, and also you've got to remember, I mean, Ysterlens, for all their pace, they came into this weekend feeling exceptionally confident. They had their own fair share of bad luck yesterday on Simon Riker's stint, where things went slightly awry, ended up toppling down the order after place gains were made to get inside the top 10. Eventually found himself in P14 prior to the driver changes. Tom Empson now goes fastest here in the session, and it was all down to Christopher Haas to close down the gap between himself and obviously the top 3 in the pro class, eventually coming home with an astonishing P3 effort in what could only be described as a Phoenix drive, but something we have come to expect from Christopher Haas. They would have hoped for a better day today, but with that puncture, is the hoodoo creeping in again?
Oh, they'll be able to slap a new one on it. Won't be ideal, of course, because they are limited on the number of tyres they can use during a weekend.
Leaves you off kilter, really, heading into the race later on.
It does a little bit. Did get an answer, because, of course, we saw yellow flanks come out yesterday and Simon Riker suddenly lose a bunch of places, and that was just a spin on his own in the middle sector, which I've got to say is a rare thing to see these days, especially from Simon, who's getting quite experienced now in these cars. And so, yeah, a sort of an unprovoked spin, which you don't see very often. And, oh, there's quite a bit of smoke
coming
coming
left there, is there? Goodness me.
Rear. So hopefully that hasn't done too much damage to the underside of the Audi, because, of course, this was going to be a very serious contender for pole position today. And right, so it's not quite going into the garage just yet, and you can see it doesn't. Oh, that is the cleanest break. It's just come off the rim, basically.
Yeah, you could do worse.
That is, you'd be hard pressed to even call that a puncture. You'd call that falling off the wheel, wouldn't you? So I wonder if he's. Remember in Paul Ricard when Ralph Aaron managed to yank the tyre off the rim through Scene Corner?
Well, if you think about Remus Corner in itself, because it's such a sharp turn, you're flying on. We've got a bit of a moment here for the Greystone GT McLaren. This, of course, the number 27, Jaden Kelly, behind the wheel of this one, just having a bit of a trip, taking a bit of a unique view of the surroundings here in the Styrian Mountains. But we know that at the top of the hill at turn 3, you come in with so much force, and then you're immediately suddenly switching the car through over approximately 90 degrees. The lateral load that is then enforced on that side of the car is quite surmountable. So therefore, you're probably very likely going to find occasions where tyres are put immensely under pressure. It's probably just the sheer force, Chris, that's just sent that rubber off the rim itself.
Well, where is Haas at the moment? Did he manage to get any lap in?
P8
yes, he did. 8th fastest, 6/10 away. So hopefully just slapping a new tyre on will do the job there, because of course that is our new championship leader.
They might want to do some light running now towards the end in order just to maintain some grip on that tyre. I know I spoke to Levente Ravesh yesterday because Maxi Gertz had his puncture at the very start of the race, and it left them a little bit unbalanced when the pit stop came around for the driver change period. Levente Ravesh basically said on his stint he could feel the lack of grip on that one part of the car, and he definitely felt compromised in certain areas, so he wasn't able to gain as effectively as he would have liked to. So naturally, Easter Lent wants to try and avoid that same situation happening to them as such, because of course when the pit stops do occur, it could mean they have to do some effective tyre saving, I suppose, in a certain degree, just to maintain that compound.
New Pro-Am Championship leader here, number 20 SBS Mercedes. It's Valentin Pierberg at the wheel of the car, the bronze driver, so the AM in that Pro-Am effort. It was Dominic Baumann who qualified the car yesterday, and Pierberg, currently one of the fastest of the Pro-Am, of the bronze drivers in the Pro-Am category at the moment. So obviously we've got Yannick Mettler in the car barn by SBS Mercedes that didn't get further than turn 3 in yesterday's race, and Eduardo Bacci, Alexei Nesov, Lucas Dunner, and Stuart White as well. So these are all the pro runners. Philippe Salacada, yep, he's the silver in that car as well. So yeah, at the moment, Pierberg the top bronze in the Pro-Am category, but top bronze driver at the moment goes to Christian Korzanowski, who's fastest of the AM runners at the moment. He's 16th overall. It's Marco Polcini, two-time Pro-Am champion with Eddie Cheever in this championship, who is second fastest there at the moment, and then Darren Kell in the McLaren car collection with a new lineup for this weekend: Alexei Nesov and Maxim Kisilov, the latter only in his second race weekend in this category. We saw these guys out in the Dynamic GT Porsche at the start of the year, but filling in for Alex Fontana and Hash over at Car Collection, as Hash has got some personal commitments that are preventing him from racing this weekend.
Yeah, of course, scored their first points yesterday in the Pro-Am classification, achieving 2. And as we now watch Alexei Nesov now twisting the wheel, trying to find the grip. You've got to be so careful. We saw it time on time yesterday during the race where drivers were getting caught coming through that section. Speaking of getting caught, we've got
Garage 59 McLaren.
Yeah, just going off wide. Of course, remember Mark Sampson, who's partnering Marco Polcini this weekend, had a bit of a moment yesterday. Of course, he was in the qualifying hot seat for yesterday's race. Now, this time it's Marco Polcini, who we're so used to seeing in Ferrari colouring, of course, because over the last 2 seasons has been a Pro-Am champion for AF Corsa and Spirit of Race, obviously very much the same entity, but of course partnering Eddie Cheever back in 2023, and then of course won the championship solo last campaign, and now this time in a McLaren 720S.
Yeah, we're not used to seeing him in a McLaren, and we're not used to seeing him in gravel traps either, so a very odd day here for Marco Polcini, who's a rather shiny bronze driver, as Yakima Altaway is back out onto the racetrack and lowering the benchmark further. Has just done 2 personal bests in the first and third sectors and a session best in the middle sector. 1:27.778 puts 3/10 between himself and Tom Empson. Jaden Kelly's just put in a good effort there to go 4th fastest and only half a second away from Altaway. That combination is looking very, very good there at the moment. It's Stuart White, though, in the Dragon Racing Run Ferrari that's suddenly popped up to the front row of the grid.
Yeah, decent lap there for Stuart White, obviously alongside Khalil Letlarka as well this weekend. Giacomo Altaway once again finding more pace inside the first sector once more. Like I said, he knows this track very well. Former winner around this circuit alongside Albert Costa, and then, of course, went on to win the title in 2019 with Emil Frey Racing. Now looking to try and dive through the Rochenwerth curves yet again. Still up on his time, lost a little bit though through the middle sector. Certainly not an improvement in terms of the middle sector time, but over the overall lap, finding yet more time against his previous run of a 1:27.778. Does have a little bit of traffic in the way, though that is the elite racing Ferrari in the pro class, so you'd expect him still to be nice and quick and offering perhaps a potential tow here for Giacomo Altoe as they fly down through towards turn one. Of course, both embracing Ferrari technology, and Altoe once again finding more time, over 3.5 tenths discovered, as Marco Polcini also goes into 19th, second in AM class as well. Christopher Haase, just to say, folks, back out on the circuit, we can see him now fresh after replacing that rear left tyre.
Red flag, George. There were yellows down at turn one. Didn't see anything out of the ordinary. This might be the reason why. So it's Gino Forgione who has spun on the exit of the first corner, the Lauda curve, and has managed to meet the barriers, and there is damage to the left rear corner of the 296. You see a little bit of the heat coming off of the tyres and the brakes, I'm sure, as well. I'm not sure how wet the grass is. We didn't have so much rain last night, but nonetheless, a car in the barriers at turn one, and therefore the red flag has been called with 5 minutes left on the clock.
Yeah, it might not have been easy to get that car moved that was into the barrier, to be honest, because of course if it did hit with enough force in that rear, it essentially bends the almost the wheel arch into the tyre itself. So it's very difficult to move when you're in that position. Gino Forgione out of the car now. Obviously, ultimately, that is always the best sign, but obviously he's going to be disappointed with the very fact that he wasn't able to continue in the qualifying session, unfortunately finding the barrier. Let's take a look at it again. Just getting onto that race curb, the rear end leaving him behind, and therefore circulating through, hitting the barrier, making contact, and certainly not the best way to kickstart. And he's had a few moments that have creeped in through the course of the weekend. It hasn't really gone to plan for the AM pairing.
Yeah, it was yesterday at, was it turn 9, turn 10, where that car was parked up at the side of the road. We've been talking an awful lot. They have been truly astonishing in the AM Championship at the Forgione and Rugolo. 6 wins so far this year, and came into this weekend with 5 on the bounce. But now, after a difficult day yesterday, it is tied on points with the Garage 59 driver Mark Sampson. And actually, if you were to apply the drop score to both of those entries as well, it would still be tied on points, which is astonishing. In which case, obviously, it would go to count back, which would put it in the AF Corsa pairing's favour with so many wins.
That's the one benefit they do have, isn't it? I suppose when you do go back to the count back rule, when you have so many wins in your back pocket, it really puts you on the upper hand. Now, the problem now that Easterlands have got, they've had a few stoppages since they've had that tyre come in for a replacement. Obviously, they've lost a deal of track time now, obviously having to get that rear left wheel essentially changed. But now to be faced with, after making your way out onto the circuit with a red flag with 5 minutes to go, it really puts pressure on Christopher Haase to land a late blow here, Chris.
It certainly does. 12th fastest at the moment, because he hasn't been able to put in a better time than that because of that puncture. So let's run you through the order. It is Giacomo Altoe for Baron Motorsports number 91, that is currently on provisional pole position, and then Stuart White making his debut here in the International GT Open this weekend in the Inter Africa by Dragon Racing Ferrari, that is second fastest. And those are both Pro-Am cars. It's Ferrari's 1, 2, 3 at the moment, with Elite's Tom Empson in third fastest, and the first of the pro cars. Alexei Nesov managed to get the Porsche from Car Collection onto the second row of the grid before that red flag was called. Then yesterday's race winner, Tommaso Mosca from AF Corsa, Jaden Kelly in his first GT3 weekend for Greystone, just ahead of the sister car of Dean McDonald by 23 thousandths of a second. Now that is incredibly good going, with Yannick Mettler in the car bar Mercedes 8th, Mikey Porter from Optimum 9th, Ralph Aaron completing the top 10, the Get Speed Mercedes. Then yesterday's Pro-Am race winner, Eduardo Bacci, is 5th of the Pro-Am runners. Christopher Haase in 12th. Mirko Bortolotti all the way down in 13th at the moment in the Oregon Lamborghini. Lucas Dunner for Motorparks Pro-Am entry 14th. And then Levente Reves, the other championship contender, in 15th.
Yeah, I mean, Team Oregon, they're going to be a little bit disappointed with how this weekend has gone, because this has been a very good track for them in the past. I was talking to Jerry Canavicio yesterday, who, even despite the trials and tribulations they have faced now, over the last season or so. Really, they've been in a bit of a drought in terms of race wins for a reasonable period of time this campaign. Obviously, if we look back to last season, Alessio Deleda, Jordan Pepper winning race 1 here at Red Bull Ring last year, Pierre-Louis Chauvet, Max Paul winning back in race 1 in 2023, and they went right through the card in 2022, taking race wins in race 1 with Kevin Gillardoni and Glenn Van Berlo, as well as Leonardo Polcini and Benjamin Hites in race 2. That's 4 wins over the last 3 campaigns we have come here to the Red Bull Ring. Unfortunately, so far, no win in race 1 yesterday. And judging from what we're seeing at the moment, especially when you have Mirko Bortolotti behind the wheel of your car, you would expect probably something a little bit more. But very much like Christopher Haase now, the pressure's on because the track is only going to cool under these red flag conditions. Chris, so the likelihood of an improvement, well, it's not going to be very likely.
Well, fast lane's already open, so we are going to be going very shortly, I would imagine, to get the final 5 minutes of this qualifying session underway. It is Ralph Aron there in the Get Speed Mercedes at the head of the queue. He, alongside many of these drivers, Dominic Baumann, Yannick Mettler included, and off the top of my head, I apologise for anyone else I haven't listed there, but many of them heading off to Suzuka next week for the 1,000 kilometres, the return of that iconic race, which I must say I'm very much looking forward to watching as well. And it's a quick turnaround for a lot of them as well, because of course we're back in action in 2 weeks' time for the penultimate meeting of the season, the last sprint weekend, so to speak, as well. We don't officially call them sprint and endurance weekends, but the format we are normally running with 2 shorter races. That's in Barcelona in 2 weeks' time before we round out the season in the middle of October for the Spa 500 finale. That's Antal Zygo and Max Hesse just conversing in the Racing Trevor garage. Looks like Antal's finished. He's not choosing to go out for these final 5 minutes. Where is he? 12th in Pro-Am as it stands. So behind Marcin Jedlinski, Aaron Walker, Fabio Barbini. Not bad company to be in, to be honest, there, but I imagine a couple of those pro runners will try and move up the order. We've got Lucas Dunner here trying to jump the queue.
Well, yeah, just to further your points, obviously now Anton Zygo has now taken his helmet off. Obviously feels that his day is done. And I think he can be forgiven for that, certainly given that we are now into the final 5 minutes. And the track at the moment, in terms of temperature, we're talking 15.7 degrees at the moment. There's still a big chill in the air. But I've got to give credit to Racing Trevor. They certainly did a phenomenal job yesterday. And we're right in the lead battle, obviously, at the start. They were effectively the cork in the bottle as well for the pro drivers that were sweeping through the field. And I got to say, I got to credit Antal Zygo's composure. Despite losing there a few seconds towards the very end, he was actually maintaining for a good deal of time. I was chatting to Levente Revest, and they were looking at the times on the board and also speaking to the guys at Easterlen. He was lapping for a good considerable amount of time, Zygo, at around 7 tenths, 8 tenths slower than the pro cars that were out on circuit. It was ultimately impressive, but then eventually, I think, naturally the pressure as it heats up, it suddenly became 2 to 3 seconds were lost over the course of a lap. But certainly a lot of learnings taken from it, I'm sure, and they'll look forward to a better afternoon as well coming up shortly. Obviously, they've got a lot of work to do, but the advantage they have in their pocket is they have Max Hesse in the car for the second half of the race.
2 cars being noted for getting into the fast lane a little bit too early. That is the Mirko Bortolotti Lamborghini and the Ralph Aron Mercedes. So effectively the first 2 cars in the queue. And also an unsafe release has been noted for the Santaloc Audi, which should be Michael Blanchimont driving that car. So could be some updates to the result post-checkered flag. We'll keep you abreast of all that when we get into the race program later on. But for now, it's 3 minutes left on the clock, and the drivers are entering their first flying laps of this final run here. And we're watching Mirko Bortolotti, Spa 24 Hours winner this year, Lamborghini's first triumph in the Ardennes Forest, and now joining us here in the International GT Open, where Oregon hopefully are finding some answers as to why they haven't got the pace they've had of recent years.
Well, certainly in the closing minutes where I thought the track might be too cold to improve, Haas has already gone green I believe, in the first sector as well. Bortolotti not quite an improvement. Grassi now with the fastest speed trap pace, so looking really strong. Bortolotti, though, still showing green on our timing screen right now in terms of what you're seeing on the broadcast overlays. It was a 22.021 inside that first sector. Haase, though, looking to dig a little bit deeper, trying to elevate at least the Easterland Audi to inside the top 10. They have been incredibly quick so far this weekend. If we go back to free practice, of course, they set the fastest time in FP1 of a 1:29.626. Of course, Simon Riker will be taking the second half of the stint. More time found here for Bortolotti, though just under 7 tenths away from Giacomo Altoe's fastest time so far of a 1:27.605. As they now fly down through towards the long straight, the Oregon 63 looking to set its first time onto the board, and it's P8 now for Mirko Bortolotti, the DTM champion, now inside the top 10.
You can just spot these pro factory drivers, can't you? Because they're just on the absolute limit of the track limits. That at turn 1 was actually over the track limit, though. There's different rules of different corners here, unfortunately, because of the different layouts. So turns 1 and 3, if you put 2 wheels behind that yellow curb, that's track limits. The final 2 corners, if you have all 4 wheels on the blue painted area, that is considered outside of track limits. But Mirko was on the absolute knife edge of that one.
Well, the good news now about his current situation, we've got 1:18 left. He should get another lap as well after this one, so he can close out furiously fast towards the end, and he should have a light fuel load as well towards the very end of this session. So we'll wait and see how he gets on. He's already up on his time again on this second fast run that he's now putting together, a 21.922. He's faster than Ralph Aaron and Christopher Haase, who are currently sat behind him. They're in 9th and 10th respectively, though Haase now has joined the 21 club, I will say that. It's a 39.3 though for Ralph Aaron in the middle sector, and green again for Stuart White with a 21.886 in the ballpark, and faster than Bortolotti in that first sector, though he has lost time in the middle.
So Chris Haase did manage to pick up a couple of places on that previous lap, that first push lap since the red flag, and it's going to be a little bit all or nothing now. He should be able to squeeze one more lap in with the former Audi Works driver. This is Stuart White, though, who's gone well in the first sector, provisionally on the front row in his first ever qualifying session here, but it's Haase who goes second fastest. Now that is the recovery that East Talent needed, and he's still got a chance to close up the gap even more, but that has just turned around their weekend, hasn't it?
Well, when you're in dire straits, Haase's the man you call. He did it yesterday, and he's doing it again. It'll be a front row if it remains like this. Altoe, though, enjoying over a 3 1/4 tenth of a second gap, as now Philip Salakada goes 15th fastest and hits the checkered flag. Tom Emson down in the middle sector by over half a second against Altoe's time at the moment. Christian Korzanowski takes the checkered flag and goes fastest of the AM runners into P12, and over 9.5 tenths away from our top time by Altoe. Mirko Bortolotti finding another 10th as well. Here comes Tom Emson trying to drag the Ferrari 296, but licking the grass on the escape of Red Bull Mobile curve, but will go second fastest anyway.
I think that's going to get deleted, though, George. I think he went fully onto the blue painted area. We were just talking about that. Right, on board with Mirko Bortolotti, who's wrestling that Oregon Lamborghini, trying to balance it through the high and medium speed corners, and yeah, he is gaining an awful lot of time out there. So can he keep it neat and tidy through this final sector? And yet that Tom Emson time has been deleted, so he gets demoted back to 6th place. Oh, a little squirrely on the exit there for Mirko Bortolotti. Is that going to compromise the final result? No, it's not. Front row for Bortolotti usurps Christopher Haase, who is demoted down to 3rd position as he enters pit lane. That's a great effort there from Mirko Bortolotti, 3 tenths away from Giacomo Altoe. It's Ferrari, Lamborghini and Audi. No, it's not. That time's been deleted.
Wow.
So Bortolotti, maybe it was a little bit questionable, but race control very sharp on that one, and Bortolotti demoted now down to 11th with that track time, that lap time being deleted, and that puts Haase back on the front row of the grid.
The variety of thresholds of danger that you get when you're in the final minutes of a session and you need a time. You're in dire straits and you need to try and grasp something at the last minute. Track limits can play a prevalent issue. Mirko Bortolotti now knows that as much as anybody else, and including Tom Emson as well. But Christopher Haase, once again, an almighty recovery for Easterland Audi, and will sit in second.
It is a 9th different pole sitter of the season, and Giacomo Altoe is audibly pleased about that one.
Absolutely. I mean, just listen to him cheering inside the car. He is absolutely thrilled. And what a gap as well to maintain. Over 3 1/4 tenths quicker than Christopher Haas's second place time. They have been on the money. Once again, he is back in a P1 scenario here at Red Bull Ring.
It is a 9th different pole sitter of the season. Giacomo Altaway fastest, as he was last year at Red Bull Ring, ahead of Christopher Haas. Stuart White, in his first qualifying session in the GT Open, will start 3rd, ahead of Dean McDonald in the Greystone GT McLaren. Yesterday's race winner, Tommaso Mosca, 5th, ahead of Tom Empson, who had that late lap time being deleted. Alexei Nesov, 7th for Car Collection. Jaden Kelly, his first GT3 qualifying session, 8th for him, ahead of Ralph Aaron and Mikey Porter, who complete the top 10. Mirko Bortolotti again had a lap time deleted right at the end there. He starts 11th ahead of Levente Reves, the championship contender. Christian Korzanowski is the fastest of the AM runners, ahead of Yannick Mettler, Eduardo Bacci, yesterday's winner in that class, Philippe Salacada, Aaron Walker, Lucas Dunner, Fabio Babini, and then Enzo Gerasi, 20th in his first ever GT3 qualifying session for Team Oregon. Behind them as well, you have Anthony Bartone, who finished 2nd yesterday. Valentin Pierberg, a Pro-Am Championship contender. Marcin Jedlinski. Marco Polcini is 2nd of the AM runners for Garage 59. Lewis Michael Dorbecker running solo now for the remainder of the season in 25th. Riemann Voss. Joining us for this weekend is 26th. Christian Poulsen in his eponymous BMW is 27th. Antal Zygo in 28th, then Darren Kell, 3rd of the AM runners, Michael Blanchimont, Amir Naran, Gino Forgione, and Alfredo Hernandez completing the 33-car field. And there is Giacomo Altaway, a big embrace there with his entourage, our 9th different pole sitter of the season. And a cracking job done once again. It's a carbon copy of last year when he and Ernst Kirkmeyer did a bit of a wild card outing. I believe that was the last time we saw Ernst Kirkmeyer out. It was a Racing 1 run Ferrari back then, but now with Baron Motorsport, it's a home race for the Vienna-based squad.
It's been a good weekend, I must say, for Ferrari as a whole, really, hasn't it? When you look at it on paper, incredible. I mean, Giacomo Altaway proving that fact. Stuart White, we've got to give credit to him too. Absolutely. After a cracking qualifying performance. And obviously for Kalila Letnarka, the Dragon Racing team, they're going to look forward to a good race hunting down the Pro-Am advantage. Let's go through the top 3, Chris.
So it's Giacomo Altaway on pole position. Let's hear from him.
Sunday morning at the Red Bull Ring, there is still some mist on the trees, but Giacomo Altaway is back to the championship and pole position.
Yeah, amazing feeling. I really want to thank the team. They did a great job. We have been having some issues over the weekend. They've been working a lot overnight to try to find the issue. Now we are quick again, so thank you to all the team. And yeah, last year we were here, pole positions, and this year again, so it feels great. Looks like I have a good relation with this car and this track, so I'm very happy.
And you won last year the Pro-Am category.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really tough competition, really high level, so every race is a different race, of course, hard racing, but we try our best, we push, and we will see.
First step is done. All the best.
Thank you. Well, it is lights out for race 2 in the International GT Open at 1:15 local time. Join us then.